The spaceship glided silently through the vast emptiness of space, its sleek metallic surface reflecting faint starlight. Inside, 4 figures sat in a dimly lit control room, their eyes fixed on the glowing screens before them. They were explorers from Zoreth 7, a planet known across the galaxy for its harsh conditions and deadly creatures. Survival there was not just a way of life, it was a constant battle. These explorers had grown up believing they were the toughest beings in existence. But today, everything was about to change. Commander Kyle Voss leaned forward in his seat, his sharp features illuminated by the soft blue glow of the navigation panel. His fingers danced over the controls as he studied the readings flashing across the screen. "We're approaching something unusual," he said, his voice calm but tinged with curiosity. The others turned to look at him, their expressions a mix of excitement and caution. Rachel Monroe, the team's biologist, adjusted her glasses and peered at the data scrolling past. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a tight bun, and her green eyes sparkled with interest. "It's a planet," she said after a moment. "But it's different. Look at these energy signatures. They don't match anything we've seen before." Daniel Hayes, the engineer, frowned as he examined the readings on his own monitor. He was a tall man with dark hair and a no-nonsense attitude. "Different doesn't mean dangerous," he muttered, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. "Could just be some weird magnetic field or atmospheric interference." Lisa Carter, the youngest member of the team, leaned closer to get a better view. She was petite, with short brown hair and an eager smile that never seemed to fade. "Or it could be aliens," she said brightly. "Imagine finding intelligent life out here. Wouldn't that be amazing?" Kyle shot her a quick glance, his expression unreadable. "Let's not jump to conclusions," he said firmly. "We'll scan it first, then decide if it's worth investigating further." As the ship moved closer, the planet came into clearer view on the main display. It was beautiful. A swirling sphere of blues, greens, and whites, dotted with patches of brown and gold. Clouds drifted lazily across its surface, and vast oceans shimmered under the light of a distant sun. It looked peaceful, almost inviting. "That's Earth," Rachel announced, tapping a few keys to pull up more information. "According to our database, it's home to a species called humans. Not much else is listed, just some old records suggesting they're relatively primitive." "Primitive," Daniel snorted. "Sounds boring. Why waste our time?" "Because we're here now," Kyle replied evenly. "And you know the rules. Every discovery counts, no matter how small." Lisa clapped her hands together softly. "I still think it's exciting. What if they have cool technology? Or maybe they figured out how to live in harmony with nature. Imagine learning something new from them." Rachel nodded thoughtfully. "There's only one way to find out. Let's land and take a closer look." After a brief discussion, the team agreed to descend to the planet's surface. As the ship entered Earth's atmosphere, the air outside crackled with energy, and the hull groaned slightly under the pressure. Kyle kept his focus steady, guiding the vessel toward a clearing surrounded by dense trees. When they finally touched down, the silence inside the ship was heavy with anticipation. "Well," Kyle said, breaking the quiet, "let's see what this place is really made of." One by one, the team stepped out onto the alien soil, their boots crunching against the grass beneath their feet. The air smelled fresh, filled with scents none of them could identify. Birds chirped in the distance, and leaves rustled in the gentle breeze. For a moment, they simply stood there, taking it all in. Earth didn't seem dangerous. In fact, it felt almost serene. But as Kyle reminded himself, appearances could be deceiving, and deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that this planet held secrets far greater than any of them could imagine. The team stood in a small clearing surrounded by towering trees, their equipment strapped securely to their backs. The air smelled fresh but unfamiliar, and the sounds of chirping birds echoed around them. Rachel Monroe adjusted her scanner, her eyes scanning the dense forest ahead. "This place feels alive," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. Kyle Voss nodded, his hand resting on the weapon at his side. "Stay alert," he said firmly. "We don't know what's out there yet." He glanced at Lisa Carter, who was already stepping forward with her usual enthusiasm. "And Lisa, don't wander off." Lisa grinned over her shoulder. "Don't worry, Commander. I'll stick close." But even as she spoke, her gaze darted curiously toward the shadows between the trees. Everything about Earth seemed so different from Zoreth 7. It wasn't harsh or barren like home. It was vibrant, almost welcoming. Still, Kyle's warning lingered in her mind. As they moved deeper into the forest, Daniel Hayes kept an eye on his tracking device. "Energy readings are fluctuating," he muttered, frowning at the screen. "Something nearby is messing with our sensors." "Could be natural," Rachel suggested, though her tone hinted at doubt. "Earth has a lot of magnetic activity, according to the database." Before Daniel could respond, a sudden rustling sound came from behind a cluster of bushes. Everyone froze, their hands instinctively reaching for their weapons. Kyle signaled for silence as he crept closer, peering cautiously through the foliage. What he saw made him pause. A group of humans had gathered not far away, their movements clumsy compared to the sleek efficiency of Zorathians. They wore simple clothing and carried strange objects that gleamed in the sunlight. One of them pointed at something on the ground, a dead animal, and began skinning it with a sharp blade. "They look primitive," Kyle whispered, turning back to his team. "But we should stay hidden. We don't know how they'll react if they see us." Rachel nodded, her curiosity piqued. "They're using tools. That shows intelligence, even if it's basic." Daniel rolled his eyes. "Basic? You call hacking apart an animal intelligent? It's survival." Rachel shot back, her voice low but firm. "Just like us." While the argument simmered quietly, Lisa wandered a few steps closer to get a better view. She crouched behind a tree, watching intently as one of the humans stood up and shouted something to the others. His voice carried through the air, rough and guttural. Then, without warning, he raised a long object, a rifle, and fired it into the distance. The loud crack startled Lisa, and she stumbled backward, accidentally stepping on a dry twig. The snap echoed loudly, drawing the attention of the humans. Their heads whipped around, eyes narrowing as they scanned the area. "Lisa," Kyle hissed, rushing toward her. "Get back here." But it was too late. One of the humans pointed directly at her, shouting again. Another raised his rifle, aiming it in her direction. Without hesitation, Kyle grabbed Lisa's arm and pulled her behind a thick tree trunk, just as a bullet whizzed past, embedding itself in the bark. "What was that?" Lisa exclaimed, her face pale with shock. "A projectile weapon," Daniel replied grimly, checking his own gear. "Primitive, yes, but effective." Kyle clenched his jaw, his mind racing. These humans might not have advanced technology, but they were clearly capable of defending themselves. And now, they knew something, or someone, was out there. "We need to retreat," Kyle ordered, his voice tight with urgency. "Back to the ship. Now." The team moved quickly, sticking to the shadows as the humans continued searching for the source of the noise. Rachel glanced back once, her heart pounding. Despite the danger, she couldn't help but feel intrigue. These creatures weren't like anything they'd encountered before. They seemed weak, fragile even, yet they possessed a kind of raw determination that reminded her oddly of Zorathians. When they finally reached the safety of their ship, Kyle locked the door behind them and turned to face his team. "That went poorly," he said flatly. "We underestimated them. Let's not make the same mistake again." Lisa slumped into a seat, still shaken. "I didn't think they'd notice me." "They noticed all right," Daniel muttered, inspecting the dent in the tree where the bullet had struck. "Looks like Earth isn't as harmless as it seems." Rachel crossed her arms, deep in thought. "Maybe that's the point," she said softly. "Maybe this planet is more dangerous because it doesn't *look dangerous." Kyle sighed, rubbing his temples. Whatever the case, we need to be smarter next time. For now, let's regroup and figure out our next move. No one spoke as the weight of their discovery settled over them. Earth was full of surprises, and not all of them were pleasant. Back inside the ship, the team gathered around a small table in the central chamber. The air was tense, but there was also a flicker of excitement in their eyes. Earth had proven to be more than they expected, and now they needed answers. Rachel Monroe opened her laptop and began reviewing the data they collected during their brief encounter with the humans. Her fingers moved quickly over the keyboard as images and graphs appeared on the screen. "These humans are fascinating," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "They're not physically strong like us, but they've adapted in other ways." Kyle Voss leaned forward, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. "Adapted how?" "By shooting at anything that moves." Rachel shook her head, unfazed by his sarcasm. "No, Commander. Look at this." She pointed to a chart showing various species native to Earth. Their animals are smaller and weaker compared to Zorethian predators, but they've learned to survive in almost any environment. Even tiny creatures like insects can thrive in extreme conditions. Daniel Hayes raised an eyebrow, skeptical as always. "So what? Bugs surviving doesn't make them dangerous." "It's not just bugs," Rachel replied patiently. "It's everything here. Earth is unpredictable. Its weather changes suddenly. Its terrain varies wildly, and its creatures evolve rapidly. Humans have had to adapt to all of it. That makes them resilient." Lisa Carter nodded eagerly, leaning closer to see the screen. "That's amazing. Do you think that's why they were able to spot us so fast?" "Maybe," Rachel admitted, "but we still don't know enough about them." The conversation paused when Lisa suddenly stood up. "I want to go back out there," she announced, her tone firm despite the nervous glances from the others. "We need to learn more about this place if we're going to understand it." Kyle frowned deeply. "Absolutely not. We barely escaped last time." "But we can't stay cooped up in here forever," Lisa argued. "If we keep hiding, we'll never figure out what makes Earth special." Rachel hesitated before speaking. "She has a point, Commander. If we stick to safe zones, we won't get real data. Maybe we could try somewhere less populated next time." Kyle sighed, clearly torn. He didn't like putting his team in danger, but he knew they couldn't complete their mission without taking risks. Finally, he nodded reluctantly. "Fine, but we do it carefully. No unnecessary risks." Later that day, the team ventured into a remote area far from human settlements. The landscape was rugged and wild, dotted with jagged rocks and thick underbrush. As they explored, Lisa wandered slightly ahead, her wide eyes scanning every detail. Suddenly, she froze, spotting movement in the distance. "Guys, look," she whispered, pointing toward a pack of wolves emerging from the trees. Their sleek gray bodies moved silently, their yellow eyes sharp and alert. Kyle immediately stepped in front of Lisa, his weapon ready. "Stay calm," he murmured. "Let's see what they do." The wolves circled cautiously, their ears twitching as they sniffed the air. For a moment, it seemed like they might attack. But then one of them let out a low growl and turned away, leading the pack back into the forest. Lisa exhaled sharply, her heart racing. Why did they leave? Rachel knelt down, examining the ground where the wolves had been standing. "Smell," she said simply. "Our scent must have confused them. They probably decided we weren't worth the trouble." Daniel smirked, lowering his weapon. "Guess we're scarier than we thought." Kyle didn't smile. Instead, he looked thoughtful, staring after the retreating wolves. Or maybe they've learned when to pick their battles. Either way, it proves something. We're outsiders here. This planet has rules we don't fully understand yet. As they continued their exploration, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that Earth was testing them in subtle ways. Its dangers weren't obvious like those on Zoreth 7. They were hidden beneath layers of complexity. Every plant, animal, and even gust of wind seemed to carry secrets waiting to be uncovered. By the time they returned to the ship, exhaustion weighed heavily on the team. But Lisa's earlier words lingered in their minds. Earth wasn't just another planet. It was a puzzle, and solving it would require patience, courage, and perhaps a willingness to confront things they didn't fully comprehend. Rachel sat quietly in the corner, jotting notes in her journal. One sentence stood out among the rest. Asterisk survival isn't always about strength. It's about adaptation. Asterisk. She closed the book slowly, wondering if they were truly prepared for what lay ahead. The next morning, the team decided to observe humans again, but this time from a safer distance. They chose a small town nestled in a valley, its buildings made of wood and brick, with narrow roads winding between them. Smoke curled lazily from chimneys, and the faint hum of activity filled the air. The scene looked peaceful, almost too peaceful. Kyle Voss adjusted his holographic cloak, ensuring it blended seamlessly with the surroundings. "Remember," he said quietly, glancing at each member of the team, "we're here to watch, not interact. If anything goes wrong, we retreat immediately." Rachel Monroe nodded, her eyes already scanning the area for details. She carried a handheld device that recorded everything they saw, her fingers poised over the buttons. Lisa Carter bounced on her toes, barely able to contain her excitement. Even Daniel Hayes seemed more alert than usual, his usual skepticism replaced by cautious curiosity. As they moved closer to the edge of the town, the sounds grew louder. Laughter, hammering, and the occasional bark of a dog. Humans milled about, some carrying tools, others pushing carts or leading animals. Children ran through the streets, their high-pitched giggles echoing off the walls. It was a stark contrast to the survival-focused efficiency of Zorath 7. "Look at how they work together," Rachel whispered, pointing to a group of men lifting a heavy beam onto the frame of a new building. "They're cooperating without hesitation. That's impressive." Daniel snorted softly. "Impressive. They're slow and clumsy. Back home, one of our machines could do that job in seconds." "But they don't have those machines," Rachel countered. "They rely on each other instead. There's something admirable about that." Before Daniel could argue further, a loud boom cut through the air. The team ducked instinctively as a cloud of smoke rose from the far side of the town. Humans rushed toward the noise, shouting and waving their arms. Kyle motioned for the team to stay low and follow cautiously. When they reached the source of the commotion, they found a group of humans gathered around two large vehicles that had collided. Metal was twisted, glass scattered across the ground, and sparks flew as someone worked to free a trapped man. Nearby, another human operated a strange device that sprayed foam onto the wreckage, presumably to prevent fire. Lisa watched intently, her brow furrowed. "What are they doing?" "They're helping," Rachel replied, her voice soft with awe. "Even though they're injured, they're working together to fix things." Kyle remained silent, his sharp eyes taking in every detail. He noticed how quickly the humans adapted to the situation, improvising solutions with whatever tools they had available. Their actions weren't perfect, but they were effective, and driven by a sense of purpose. Suddenly, a young boy playing nearby stumbled into view, accidentally kicking a rock that skittered toward the team. Lisa gasped as the cloaking device flickered momentarily, revealing a glimpse of her boot. The boy froze, staring wide-eyed at the spot where she stood. "Move," Kyle hissed, grabbing Lisa's arm and pulling her back. The team retreated swiftly, melting into the shadows before anyone else noticed. Behind them, the boy pointed and shouted, drawing the attention of several adults who began searching the area. Once they were safely hidden behind a cluster of trees, Kyle turned to Lisa, his expression stern. "You nearly gave us away. What were you thinking?" I didn't mean to." Lisa stammered, her face flushed with embarrassment. "It was just a kid. A kid who could have led an entire town straight to us." Kyle snapped. "We can't afford mistakes like that." Rachel stepped forward, placing a calming hand on Kyle's shoulder. "She's right, Commander. We need to be more careful, but we also need to remember why we're here. Every close call teaches us something new. Kyle sighed, running a hand through his hair. Fine. But from now on, no unnecessary risks. Understood. Everyone nodded, though Lisa still looked shaken. As they made their way back to the ship, the weight of what they'd witnessed settled over them. Humans weren't just survivors, they were innovators, problem solvers, and collaborators. Their methods might seem crude compared to Zorathian technology, but their ingenuity was undeniable. Back aboard the ship, Daniel broke the silence. So, what do we do now? Keep watching these people until they figure out we're here. No, Kyle replied firmly. We've seen enough to know Earth isn't what we expected. Now we need to decide how to handle it. Rachel glanced out the window at the blue-green planet below, her thoughts swirling. Maybe the real question is whether we're ready for what Earth has to teach us. Her words hung in the air, unanswered but impossible to ignore. Back aboard the ship, the team gathered around a holographic display showing images and data collected during their mission. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Each member seemed lost in thought, replaying moments from their encounters with Earth in their minds. Rachel Monroe tapped a few keys, bringing up close-up shots of humans working together, building structures, and caring for one another. Look at this, she said, pointing to a photo of a man helping an elderly woman cross a busy street. Humans aren't just surviving. They're protecting each other. That's not something we see often on Zorath 7. Daniel Hayes crossed his arms, leaning back in his chair. Sure, they help each other, but that doesn't make them special. Back home, we call that basic survival instinct. Not exactly, Rachel countered gently. On Zorath 7, survival is about strength and dominance. Here, it's different. Humans rely on teamwork, creativity, and even emotions like compassion. Those traits may seem weak to us, but they've allowed them to thrive despite their planet's challenges. Kyle Voss listened silently, his sharp gaze moving between the screen and his crew. He had always believed Zorathians were the ultimate survivors, tough, ruthless, and unmatched in resilience. But Earth was forcing him to rethink everything he knew. If humans are so adaptable, why haven't they spread beyond their planet? He asked finally. Rachel hesitated before answering. Maybe they're still learning, or maybe their focus is inward, on improving their own world rather than conquering others. Lisa Carter nodded enthusiastically. That makes sense. They're constantly creating new things, art, music, technology. Have you seen their paintings? They use colors in ways I've never imagined. Daniel rolled his eyes. Art won't save them if they're attacked by predators or aliens. No, Rachel agreed, but it shows they think differently than we do. Their ability to imagine and create gives them an edge we might not understand yet. The discussion grew heated as the team debated whether humans posed a threat or an opportunity. Kyle raised a hand to silence them. Enough. Arguing won't get us anywhere. We need facts, not theories. He turned to Daniel. Can you analyze their weapons and technology? Compare them to ours. Daniel nodded, already typing commands into his console. I'll start running simulations, but don't expect anything groundbreaking. Their tech is primitive compared to ours. Primitive doesn't mean useless, Rachel reminded him. Remember the rifles. Simple, yes, but effective enough to scare us off. Kyle frowned, recalling the bullet that had nearly hit Lisa. True. And let's not forget how quickly those townspeople reacted when they thought something was wrong. Humans may not have advanced tools, but they're resourceful. As the hours passed, the team pored over their findings. Rachel studied biological samples taken from Earth's soil and plants, marveling at how life forms adapted to such diverse environments. Lisa reviewed video footage of human interactions, noting patterns of behavior that hinted at deeper social structures. Even Daniel admitted grudgingly that humanity's ingenuity deserved respect, though he remained wary of their unpredictability. Finally, Kyle called everyone together for a final meeting. We've learned a lot, he began, his tone serious. Earth is dangerous. not because of its creatures or weather, but because of its people. They're fragile, yes, but also clever, determined, and relentless. If provoked, they could become a real threat. Rachel leaned forward, her expression earnest. Or allies. Think about it, Commander. Imagine what we could learn from them. New ways of thinking, adapting, surviving. They might not be physically strong, but their minds are powerful. Kyle considered her words carefully. He knew reporting Earth as a potential enemy would be the safer choice. But deep down, he couldn't ignore the possibility that humanity had something valuable to offer. Not just to Zoreth 7, but to the entire galaxy. Here's what we'll do, he said after a long pause. We'll leave Earth alone for now. No interference, no contact. But we'll document everything we've discovered and present it to our leaders when we return. Let them decide what to do next. The team exchanged glances, sensing the weight of Kyle's decision. It wasn't perfect, but it was fair, and it gave them time to reflect on what they'd witnessed. As the ship prepared to depart, Rachel stood by the window, gazing down at Earth one last time. The planet shimmered beneath them, vibrant and full of life. She felt a strange mix of admiration and unease, knowing they were leaving behind a world unlike any other. Do you think they'll ever find out about us? Lisa asked softly, joining her. Rachel smiled faintly. Maybe. And if they do, I hope we're ready. With that, the ship ascended into the stars, carrying its crew, and their newfound questions, back toward Zoreth 7. The ship hummed softly as it traveled through space, leaving Earth far behind. Inside, the team gathered in the main chamber to review their final report before transmitting it to Zoreth 7. Each member sat quietly, their thoughts heavy with everything they had seen and learned. Kyle Voss broke the silence first. We need to be clear about one thing, he said, his voice firm but calm. Earth is unique. Its people are unpredictable, resourceful, and dangerous in ways we didn't expect. If our leaders decide to act against them, it won't be easy. Rachel Monroe nodded, her hands resting on the table. But we also can't ignore the good things we saw. Humans create art, music, and ideas that inspire each other. They work together, even when it's hard. Those qualities make them special, not just a threat. Daniel Hayes leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Special or not, they're still primitive compared to us. Sure, they've got some clever tricks, but they don't have our technology or strength. Why waste time thinking about them? Because they could surprise us. Lisa Carter chimed in, her tone eager. Remember how fast they reacted when they thought something was wrong, or how they figured out ways to survive in such tough environments. That's not something we should ignore. Kyle glanced at Lisa, then at the rest of the team. He knew they were divided. Some saw humanity as a potential ally, while others viewed them as a risk. But one thing was certain. Earth couldn't be dismissed as insignificant. We'll include all of this in the report, Kyle decided. The strengths, the weaknesses, the unpredictability. Our leaders will need every detail to make the right choice. As the discussion continued, Rachel opened her journal and flipped through its pages. She had filled it with notes, sketches, and observations from their mission. One entry caught her eye, a paragraph about a human child she'd watched playing with a dog. The scene had seemed so simple yet profound, a reminder of how humans found joy even in small moments. I keep thinking about their emotions, Rachel said suddenly, interrupting the conversation. Back home, we focus on survival above all else. Emotions are seen as distractions, but for humans, feelings like love, fear, and hope seem to drive them forward. It's part of what makes them so adaptable. Lisa smiled faintly. And creative. Did you see those paintings? They use colors to tell stories without saying a word. Daniel shrugged. Stories won't save them if someone attacks. Strength does. Maybe, Rachel replied gently. But maybe there's more than one way to survive. What if emotions give humans an edge we don't understand yet? Kyle listened carefully, his expression thoughtful. He had always believed survival depended on power and efficiency, but Earth challenged that idea. Humans weren't the strongest or fastest beings. They weren't even close. Yet they thrived despite constant threats, using their minds and hearts to overcome obstacles. Finally, he stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. Let's finish the report and send it off. Whatever happens next is out of our hands. Hours later, the transmission was complete. The team sat together in the common area, staring at the stars outside the window. For the first time since leaving Earth, no one spoke. The weight of their discovery hung over them, unanswered questions swirling in their minds. Lisa broke the quiet after a while. Do you think they'll listen to us? Our leaders, I mean. They'll listen, Kyle said firmly. But whether they'll agree with us, that's another story. Rachel sighed, turning her gaze toward the endless expanse of space. I just hope they realize how much we could learn from Earth if we handle it the right way. Daniel didn't respond, his usual skepticism overshadowed by uncertainty. Even he couldn't deny that humanity's resilience left a mark on him. As the hours passed, the team began preparing for their return to Zorath 7. But none of them could shake the feeling that Earth had changed them. Its lessons lingered, hidden beneath layers of wonder and doubt. When Kyle finally retired to his quarters, he paused by the viewport, gazing at the distant glow of Earth's sun. A single thought echoed in his mind. Asterisk, what if we're not the ultimate survivors after all? Asterisk. With that unsettling question lingering, he turned away, ready to face whatever awaited them back home. The ship descended slowly through Zorath 7's thick, stormy atmosphere, its hull rattling against the planet's harsh winds. The team sat in silence, their faces pale with exhaustion and tension. They had spent weeks analyzing Earth, debating its mysteries, and preparing their report. Now they were finally home, but none of them felt truly ready to face what came next. As the ship touched down on the cracked, barren surface of their homeworld, Kyle Voss took a deep breath. Remember, he said firmly, glancing at each member of his crew, stick to the facts. Let the leaders decide how to handle this. Rachel Monroe nodded, clutching her journal tightly. She had poured her thoughts into those pages, capturing every detail about Earth's beauty, danger, and complexity. But now, as she stared out at the desolate landscape of Zorath 7, she wondered if anyone would truly understand. The team disembarked, greeted by a group of officials waiting impatiently on the landing platform. Their leader, Commander Laura Drake, stepped forward, her sharp eyes scanning the weary explorers. Report, she demanded, her voice cutting through the cold air like a blade. Kyle stepped up, standing tall despite his fatigue. Earth is unlike any planet we've encountered, he began, his tone steady. Its inhabitants, humans, are physically weak compared to us, but they possess qualities that make them dangerous. They're adaptable, resourceful, and capable of working together in ways we didn't anticipate. Drake raised an eyebrow. Dangerous? How? They use tools and weapons effectively, Daniel Hayes added, stepping forward. Primitive, yes, but enough to pose a threat if provoked. And yet, Rachel interjected softly, they're also creative and compassionate. They build communities, create art, and solve problems in unique ways. If approached carefully, they could become allies rather than enemies. Drake frowned, clearly skeptical. Allies with primitives. Not primitives. Lisa Carter spoke up, her voice trembling slightly under the weight of the commander's gaze. Survivors. Just like us, but different. For a moment, no one spoke. The wind howled around them, carrying dust and debris across the barren ground. Finally, Drake turned to Kyle. You've given us much to consider. We'll review your findings and decide the next steps. With that, the officials left, leaving the team alone on the platform. Kyle exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. That went well enough. Rachel smiled faintly. I think we did our best. Whether they listen or not is out of our hands. Over the following days, the team was summoned repeatedly to answer questions from Zorethian leaders. Each meeting felt like a test, their words scrutinized for any hint of bias or error. Through it all, they stood united, determined to present Earth honestly, not just as a potential threat, but as a world full of possibilities. One evening, after a particularly grueling session, the team gathered in Kyle's quarters. The room was small and dimly lit, but it offered a rare moment of peace. Rachel sat cross-legged on the floor, flipping through her journal while Lisa leaned against the wall, staring blankly at the ceiling. "What do you think will happen?" Lisa asked quietly. "I don't know," Kyle admitted, sitting down beside her. "But whatever it is, we did the right thing by telling the truth." Rachel closed her journal with a soft snap. "May the Earth changed us more than we realize. I keep thinking about how fragile humanity is and how strong they are at the same time. It makes me wonder, are we really so different?" Daniel, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. "If there's one thing I learned from this mission, it's that survival isn't just about being tough. Sometimes, it's about finding new ways to adapt." No one argued with him. For the first time, they all seemed to agree. Weeks passed, and the leaders made their decision. Earth would remain untouched, for now. No missions, no contact, no interference. The planet was too unpredictable, too valuable to risk damaging before fully understanding its secrets. When the news reached the team, they felt a mix of relief and unease. Earth was safe, for the moment, but they knew their discovery wouldn't stay hidden forever. As Kyle stood on a ridge overlooking Zoreth 7's endless wasteland, he thought about the blue-green planet they had left behind. Its vibrant life, its resilient people, and its unspoken promise lingered in his mind. Perhaps, he thought, Earth held lessons even Zorethians could learn from. And maybe, just maybe, humanity wasn't so different from them after all.